Keanu Reeves has always felt a deep connection to wildlife, especially lions. While working at a wildlife park in Africa, he took on a hands-on role in protecting the lions. The park, home to 30 lions, became a place where Keanu felt responsible for their safety. His love for nature and commitment to conservation led him to take action, creating a bond with the lions that would change everything. One morning, Keanu Reeves was driving through the wildlife park. As he moved through the rocky terrain, Keanu spotted a group of young lions playing near the edge of a cliff. The cubs were full of energy, chasing each other and jumping around, unaware of the danger so close to them. Keanu smiled, but a sense of worry quickly settled in. He knew how dangerous the cliff could be, especially for the young cubs who didn't fully understand the risks. The rocks were unstable, and one wrong move could send them falling. He hoped the adult lions would keep the cubs away from the edge, but his concern grew as he watched them play so near the drop. Suddenly, as Keanu watched in horror, the ground beneath one of the cubs began to crumble. The cub tried to jump away, but it was too late. With a heart-stopping moment, the cub slipped and tumbled off the edge of the cliff, desperately clawing at the rocks to stop its fall. Keanu's heart raced. His first instinct was to act quickly. The cub's claws were barely holding onto the rock, and it seemed like it wouldn't be able to stay there for much longer. Keanu knew he had to do something before it was too late. He picked up his radio and urgently called for help, explaining the situation and requesting immediate assistance. As he waited for the rangers to arrive, Keanu knew the only way to save the cub was to get close to the cliff. The other lions were still nearby, and he needed to get them away to safely carry out the rescue. Keanu drove his jeep toward the cliff, honking loudly and maneuvering the vehicle to drive the pride away. His plan worked, and the lions slowly moved away, giving Keanu the space he needed to reach the cub. Time was running out. Keanu quickly got out of the jeep and ran to the edge of the cliff. There, hanging desperately, was the cub, its claws struggling to hold on. Keanu took a deep breath, knowing that he had to act fast before the cub's strength gave out completely. This was the moment where everything would change. Keanu Reeves knew that time was running out. The young lion was hanging by its claws from the cliff, struggling to hold on. Keanu felt the pressure mount. He had to act quickly, but he couldn't risk the other lions getting in the way. The pride, still nearby, could easily disrupt the rescue operation. Without hesitation, Keanu jumped back into his jeep and started it up, driving it toward the cliff. His plan was simple: use the sound of the jeep's engine and horn to scare the lions away. The loud noise would drive them back, giving Keanu the space he needed to save the cub. As he approached the pride, Keanu honked the horn, hoping to get their attention. The sound echoed through the rocky area, and the lions immediately looked up, startled. They growled and moved slowly, but Keanu kept driving forward, honking the horn even louder. Finally, the pride began to retreat, moving away from the cliff's edge, clearing the area. Keanu breathed a sigh of relief but knew the real challenge was just beginning. With the lions out of the way, he quickly jumped out of the jeep and ran to the edge of the cliff. The cub was still hanging there, its tiny claws desperately clinging to the rocks. The lion's amber eyes locked with Keanu's, and for a moment, it seemed as if they understood each other. Keanu's heart raced as he realized how much danger the cub was in. Keanu knew he didn't have much time. He ran back to the jeep and grabbed the rope from the trunk. He quickly tied one end around a sturdy tree and made a loop at the other end. He then tied the rope to himself, carefully approaching the edge of the cliff. The cub was barely holding on now, its grip slipping. Keanu knew that if he didn't act fast, the cub would fall to the rocks below. With steady hands, Keanu carefully lowered the rope towards the cub, speaking softly to calm it down. The lion looked up at him, its fear slowly giving way to trust. Keanu managed to secure the rope around the cub's body, taking great care to avoid startling it. Once the rope was in place, Keanu gave the signal to the other rangers, who were now ready to help. The team began to pull the rope slowly, lifting the cub up inch by inch. Keanu encouraged the team, guiding them as they worked together to pull the cub to safety. The weight of the cub was heavy, and the cliff's unstable surface made the task even harder. But the team's determination pushed them forward. After several long minutes, the cub finally reached the top of the cliff, safe and sound. Keanu watched in relief as the cub was gently laid on the ground, breathing heavily but alive. He couldn't help but smile, knowing that his quick thinking and teamwork had saved the cub's life. As the young lion lay on the ground, its body trembling from the effort and fear, Keanu stayed by its side. He couldn't take his eyes off the cub, and something in its gaze made him feel connected in a way he couldn't explain. The cub, though frightened, didn't show aggression. It looked up at Keanu with those deep amber eyes, and for a moment, it was as if they understood each other without needing words. The bond between them, created by that shared moment of danger, seemed to be stronger than anything Keanu had felt before. The cub's breathing slowed, but it remained still, trusting Keanu in a way that no one could have predicted. The fear that had once been in its eyes seemed to fade, replaced by a quiet curiosity. Keanu, still kneeling beside the cub, gently reached out, his hand trembling slightly. He was unsure of how the cub would react, but his instinct told him to show calm, to offer comfort. To his surprise, the cub didn't flinch. Instead, it let out a soft, almost contented growl, not one of fear, but of recognition. Keanu's heart swelled with emotion. This wasn't just a wild animal, this was a creature that had, in some strange way, accepted him. The young lion, who moments ago had been fighting for its life, now seemed to trust him fully. Keanu carefully removed the ropes from around the cub's body. As he did, the cub didn't try to run or escape. Instead, it stayed there, watching him with those intelligent eyes. It was as if the cub understood that Keanu had saved its life, that Keanu was there to help, not harm. The feeling was overwhelming for Keanu. It was a silent moment, but one full of understanding and deep respect. When the last rope was removed, the cub slowly got to its feet. It paused, looking at Keanu one last time. In that brief moment, they shared something that went beyond words. Then, as if to thank him, the cub let out a low roar, almost like a purr, before it turned and slowly walked back to its pride. Keanu watched as the cub disappeared into the tall grass, feeling an unspoken bond between them that would stay with him forever. Keanu couldn't explain it, but he knew that this connection, this moment with the lion, would change his life. It wasn't just about saving an animal, it was about understanding the wild in a way he never had before. Months passed, but Keanu couldn't stop thinking about the young lion. Every time he went out on patrol, he found himself looking at the cliffs, hoping to catch a glimpse of the cub he had saved. The memory of its trusting eyes stayed with him, reminding him of the bond they had shared in that life-or-death moment. He often wondered if the cub remembered him, or if it had moved on, as wild animals do. Keanu knew that the lion was safe now, living with its pride, but there was a part of him that longed for a future encounter. He wanted to see the cub again, to know that it had grown strong and was thriving. He imagined what it would be like to meet again, a chance to reaffirm the unspoken bond they had shared. As Keanu drove through the park, the landscape felt familiar, but something had changed in him. The wild, once something he admired from a distance, now felt like a part of him. The lion had taught him something about trust, about the unspoken understanding that could exist between man and animal. Keanu hoped that, someday, their paths would cross again. The thought kept him going, giving him hope that this extraordinary bond would not be forgotten. One morning, a heavy rainstorm swept through the park. Keanu was on his routine patrol, driving slowly through the muddy roads, trying to keep his Jeep steady. The rain poured down in sheets, making it hard to see anything clearly. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the relentless downpour. Keanu knew the weather could be dangerous, especially during the monsoon season, but he didn't expect what happened next. As he rounded a bend in the road, a loud rumble echoed through the air. Before Keanu could react, the ground beneath him began to shake violently. A massive landslide came crashing down from the hills above, a wall of mud, rocks, and debris sweeping toward him. Panic surged through Keanu as he slammed his foot on the gas pedal, trying to escape the oncoming disaster. But the speed of the landslide was too fast. In a desperate attempt to save himself, Keanu tried to make a run for it, but the mud was already too thick. He ran toward a large fallen tree, climbing up as high as he could, gripping it tightly with both hands. His heart raced as the landslide hit with full force, the power of the mud trying to rip him from the tree. Keanu fought to hold on, but the weight of the mud buried him deeper, trapping him beneath a thick layer of debris. He tried to move, but his body was pinned down, and the air around him became thick and suffocating. For a moment, Keanu thought he might not survive. The storm roared above him, and he felt the weight of the earth pressing down on him. His thoughts raced. How long would it take for someone to find him? Would they even be able to get through the landslide to rescue him? In the thick silence that followed, Keanu tried to stay calm, knowing that panicking wouldn't help. But the longer he waited, the more hopeless it seemed. Then, just when he thought all hope was lost, he heard something. At first, it was a soft rustling sound, barely noticeable over the storm. But then it grew louder, and Keanu froze, straining to listen. The rustling was followed by something else, a low, powerful roar. His heart skipped a beat. It was unmistakable, a lion's roar. Keanu couldn't believe it. Could it really be? In the chaos of the landslide, he hadn't thought of the cub he had saved months ago. Yet here, in the middle of the storm, Keanu could hear the lion's unmistakable voice. The sound grew closer, and soon, Keanu felt the weight on his body begin to lighten. Someone, or something, was digging at the mud and debris above him. The pressure was slowly being released. It was then that Keanu saw it. Through the rain and mist, the figure of a lion appeared, its golden fur drenched with mud. The lion was the one he had saved all those months ago. Somehow, the cub had found him, despite the chaos. Keanu's eyes filled with disbelief and gratitude as the lion continued to dig at the dirt, its powerful paws removing rocks and mud, clearing the way for Keanu to breathe. With one final push, the lion's roar rang out, and the rangers, who had been searching for Keanu, appeared in the distance. They reached him just in time, pulling him from the rubble. As Keanu was lifted to safety, he looked back and saw the lion standing there, watching him with its deep, knowing eyes. It had saved him, just as Keanu had saved it. In that moment, Keanu understood something deep in his heart. The bond between him and the lion wasn't just about a single rescue, it was something stronger, something that transcended words. The lion had come back to save him, returning the favor in the most incredible way possible. Keanu felt a rush of emotion, overwhelmed by the love and gratitude he felt for the lion that had not forgotten him, even in the wild. After the landslide, Keanu sat there, shaken but deeply grateful. His heart was still racing as he looked at the lion that had saved him. The moment was beyond anything he had ever experienced. He had always known that animals could form connections with humans, but this was different. This lion, the very cub he had rescued months before, had returned to repay the favor in the most incredible way. It was a bond that seemed to transcend everything, species, time, and circumstance. As Keanu was lifted to safety by the rangers, he couldn't stop thinking about the lion. It had found him in the middle of a dangerous storm, digging through the mud, its powerful paws working to free him. Keanu had been buried under a mountain of debris, and yet, the lion had somehow known where he was. It was as if the lion understood the depth of their connection, the trust they had built together. Keanu had risked his life to save the cub, and now, in its own way, the lion had saved him in return. The days following the rescue were filled with quiet reflection for Keanu. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted inside him. The wild, once something he had admired from a distance, now felt like a part of him. His connection to nature had always been strong, but this experience had deepened it in ways he couldn't explain. The lion's return wasn't just a rescue, it was a reminder that the bond between man and nature could be real, and it could be life-changing. Keanu returned to his work with a renewed sense of purpose. Every time he ventured out into the park, he felt the presence of the lion, though he never saw it again. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the understanding that had passed between them. The lion had shown him that even in the wild, where survival was everything, there was room for compassion, trust, and connection. He knew that he would carry this experience with him for the rest of his life. The lion had given him a gift, a reminder that, sometimes, the wild has its own way of teaching us the most important lessons. And for that, Keanu would always be grateful. He had seen firsthand that the bond between man and animal wasn't just possible, it was something beautiful and real. It was a bond that would forever keep him connected to the wild, to the lions, and to the incredible power of nature.